Welcome everyone to History Gone Wilder, part of Half History Will Travel. I am your host, the Wilder Historian, and when I say that the United States and Great Britain didn't separate under peaceful terms, that would be an understatement. When the United States became its own nation and ousted the British, conspiracies about Britain attempting to reassert its power over the new states and government ran rampant through the country, which led, according to historian Lawrence Peskin, to the outbreak of the War of 1812. In this video, I dive into Peskin's article explaining how conspiracy theories led to the outbreak of the War of 1812. Almost as soon as the American Revolutionary War ended, United States citizens considered it a great possibility that Great Britain would return and attempt to claim the states as their own once again. Every interaction with the British, whether political or economical, came to be viewed as a conspiracy on the part of the British to bring the United States back into the empire. States, like those in New England particularly, quickly began trading with the British once the American Revolution ended, but the exchange of goods became a conspiracy in the minds of Americans as a way for Britain to reclaim her colonies. A New Yorker connected these imports to other alleged British atrocities, including exciting the piratical states in North Africa to capture American vessels, spreading rumors meant to injure American trade that American ships had been captured, and refusing credit to American merchants to throw the whole trade of America with Britain in British agents and factors. Those actions, he suggested, were part of the British court to spread poverty and discontent through our country and thereby to facilitate the reunion of America with Great Britain. Consuls from other nations resided in the United States as ambassadors. Americans saw these consuls and representatives as laying the political foundation for a reassertion of British control over the states. At this point, the United States operated under the Articles of Confederation, and the sovereignty of the states concerned many Americans because could a British consul coerce one state to rejoin the empire and give the British a foothold in the United States? Many considered it a great possibility. One could find a great number of Federalists in New England, and their close ties to Britain immediately after the American Revolutionary War concerned the Democratic Republicans, who accused them of being in cahoots with the British and allowing them to gain an economic foothold in the country. The connection between New England and Great Britain was not unfounded. When the French Revolution and European wars broke out, Federalists tended to side with the British in their support, and Democratic Republicans tended to side with the French revolutionaries because they viewed the overthrow of the monarchy through sympathetic eyes. By the end of 1793, Americans were becoming increasingly frustrated with British trade restrictions and continued occupation of the northwestern forts. In December, President George Washington delivered an important address highly critical of these British policies. 2 weeks later, Americans were horrified to learn that Algerian pirates had captured 11 American ships and were holding more than 100 crew members as slaves. In February, Lord Dorchester, Canada's governor-in-chief, delivered an inflammatory speech to Native Americans that became widely viewed south of the border as the trigger for Indian attacks on American forces, culminating in the Battle of Fallen Timbers the next summer. In March, Americans learned of new British orders in council constituting a blockade of the French West Indies that resulted in the seizure of more than 250 American ships and harsh treatment of their crew. Rumors swirled that the British helped facilitate the capture of those 11 American ships by Algerian pirates. Not only had the British been involved in that situation, but many Americans linked all these occurrences together, even though no evidence then or since has been discovered uncovering any kind of widespread British conspiracy. We can't say these events happened in a vacuum, but to say that Britain was pulling all these strings just to get the United States back seems like a stretch. However, the British still occupying Midwestern forts did directly and indirectly instigate some frontier attacks by Native Americans against Euro-American settlers. Federalist newspapers warned that French agents in America were instigating Native American hostilities on the frontier and planning to liberate American slaves in the South. Some even connected the French to Algerian pirates. In 1798, the Federalist President John Adams issued the Alien and Sedition Acts as a way to prevent foreign intervention in American business. Democratic Republicans grew disgusted with British-made products that many times cost less than American-made products, and thought it represented a conspiracy to defeat the United States economically since they could not do it militarily during the war. It became progressively harder for American businesses to emerge when Britain made cheaper products for the American consumer. The plot was very extensive. According to the Anglophobes, in western Connecticut, where woolen manufacturers was beginning to prosper, British agents allegedly purchased all the sheep and had them slaughtered to force continued dependence on British wool. They also allegedly purchased and destroyed silk manufacturing machinery in Pennsylvania, attacked Philadelphia's hosiery industry, and attempted to coerce at least 2 promising gunsmiths to leave the country. Again, economic battles existed in every country, but this could not be tied to the British government, even if all the allegations were factual. When John Adams and the Federalists were ousted from the presidency in 1800, the rhetoric about British involvement in the United States died down, but it would re-emerge at the end of the decade. This was a time of heightened mistrust of England generally, due to conflicts at sea, increased impressment, and heightened enforcement of trade restrictions. Conspiratorial Anglophobes saw this harassment as the product of British agents and British plots aimed specifically against the United States, rather than as unfortunate consequences of Britain's massive effort to defeat the French threat. For example, William Giles, now a Republican senator from Virginia, viewed the wartime trade restrictions as a plot by the British cabinet to destroy American commerce. Any incident became a conspiracy by the British to weaken the United States and take it over one way or another. When a Philadelphia sulfuric acid plant burned down, Democratic Republicans pointed the finger at British emissaries and spies as a way to hurt the American economy. In 1811, when the Bank of the United States needed rechartered, Democratic Republicans pointed to the fact that 70% of the investors in the bank were foreign as a sign that Britain desired to take over the United States. This is laughable when one considers all the conspiracies alleged that Britain attempted to hurt the American economy by sabotaging its industries and manufacturing, when if the American economy or government failed, then those foreign investors would lose their investments in the Bank of the United States. Additionally, to make the foreign investments seem more sinister, Democratic Republican newspapers falsely claimed that the percentage of foreign investors was close to 90%. When learning about the War of 1812 in high school or college, you probably heard that the war began because the British were impressing American sailors into the British Navy as being one of, if not the leading factors that led to the war erupting. However, to only focus on that one issue ignores the decades of conspiracies about Britain's attempt to recapture the former colonies that led to the warhawks of the West and South like Henry Clay and John C. Calhoun, who bought into these conspiracies and demanded Britain be punished for interfering with the United States politically and economically. Ultimately, if President James Madison had waited a month or so longer before going to war with Britain, he would have received word that the British had pulled back their impressment and the seizing of American ships. It was indeed a war that was unnecessary, spurred on by conspiracies that brought the conflict to a boiling point. All this goes to show that rumors and conspiracies can lead 2 countries into military conflict, no matter how true or false the allegations are.